You're tuned into Masters of the Genre, where I, Cardinal Sin, take you right to the source of the most important genre creators of their generation. Authors, actors, directors, science fiction, fantasy, comics, film, and other creators that shape our genre fiction and entertainment. Get ready to leave the world of the everyday behind and go head to head with the masters of the genre. Greetings, followers. It is I, Cardinal Sin, and my guest today is Kamran Pasha, who is a screenwriter and one of the first Muslim filmmakers to succeed in Hollywood. He recently worked as writer-producer on Showtime Network's drama series set in the American military prison at Guantanamo Bay, directed by Oliver Stone. Previously, Kamran served as a writer and co-producer of Showtime's Golden Globe and Emmy-nominated series Sleeper Cell, about a Muslim FBI agent who infiltrates a terrorist group. Kamran has written a feature film for the Kingdom of Morocco about Ibn Battuta, which follows the adventures of an Arab traveler who journeyed from Morocco to China in the 14th century. He has also written a historical epic on the love story behind the building of the Taj Mahal for Warner Brothers Pictures, and is currently developing a movie on the famed Sufi poet Rumi. Kamran has also served as a writer and producer on television shows including Rain, Nikita, Roswell, New Mexico on the CW, Shadow of the Swords, and Bionic Woman on NBC. He also served as head writer for the Tron Uprising animated series on Disney XD. Kamran is a published novelist as well. In 2009, Simon & Schuster published Mother of the Believers, a novel showing the rise of Islam from the eyes of Prophet Muhammad's wife Aisha. His second novel, Shadow of the Swords, an epic novel of the Crusades, follows the conflict between Richard the Lionheart and the Muslim leader Saladin for control of Jerusalem during the Crusades. Kamran holds a BA and an MBA from Dartmouth College, a JD from Cornell Law School, and is an alumnus of the MFA Producers Program at UCLA Film School. Welcome, Kamran Pasha, to Masters of the Genre.
All right, Cardinal, how are you? Well, I feel like you've just gone through my Match.com profile. I think we just went through the whole thing.
That was your LinkedIn right there. So let's go ahead and dive right in.
Sure, please.
I was curious, what were your early experiences as a writer?
Well, I mean, I think all artists are largely born that way. You know, I was always a writer. I was writing short stories as a little child. In fact, I was obsessed with Agatha Christie as a little kid. And so I would read her novels. And in my sixth grade school newspaper, I published my very first short story. I wrote a murder mystery. Oh, look who's here. The birthday boy himself, Mexican Iron Man. God bless.
That's right.
He's joining us. Hey.
Hello.
So Mike, I was just telling my story of how my very first published thing was a short story that was inspired by the murder of Roger Ackroyd, which is one of my favorite Agatha Christie novels. I think it's absolutely brilliant, and the solution is absolutely brilliant in that novel. And so I wrote a short story about a murder that takes place in a school, and it was published in my sixth grade elementary school newspaper and that was still to this day still one of my proudest achievements, is because that's one of the things when somebody
that was your first publishing.
That was sixth grade elementary school newspaper loved my short murder mystery short story and published it, and and so I was just telling Cardinal here how I began this journey, and I never thought I could do this professionally. It was just something I was doing on the side. But when you're meant to do something, it kind of doesn't leave you alone until you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you take us along the journey from your transition from writing into Hollywood and how it happened?
Sure. I never imagined I could be in Hollywood professionally. It didn't even occur to me because I wasn't, even as a little kid, I didn't have any connections. I actually remember this vivid moment. I remember this. I must have been 7 or 8 years old, watching, remember that you're too young for this, but there was a show, Mike might know it, Three's Company, when we were kids.
Oh my God, I love Three's Company.
Yeah, of course, one of the great classic sitcoms, right? And Three's Company. And so, that was a very risque show, not for little kids, but of course, being a little kid, you don't get all the sexy jokes, right? And so I just thought it was a funny joke, a guy living with two girls. I didn't get what was wrong with that, but whatever. So I'm 7 or 8 years old watching the show, and I was watching that, and I was enjoying it. And I turned to my sister, who was a year older than me, and I vividly remember this. I said to her, I'm going to go do that someday. I don't know why I said that, but I just said it. And that's and she looked at me and she said, oh, we don't get to do that. Our people don't get to do that. We're Pakistanis, right? So even at the age of 7 and 8 years old, we knew we weren't part of the industry's structure, club, relationships. Even a little child knew that. And yet it always stayed with me. But I never thought about it realistically. I went off. I was a professional writer in the sense I was a journalist for a few years after college. Worked on Wall Street as a financial journalist, worked with a big investment company. Mike will know it, institutional investor. You know that. You know that publisher, right? Big publisher for the pension funds, whatever. I covered the foreign exchange markets and did all that. And then I went to law school and I went to business school. I got all these degrees and I was bored out of my mind. And it was actually in an accounting class. And you're going to love this, Mike. It was in an accounting class. It was in a cost accounting class in my MBA program that I wrote my first screenplay because I couldn't figure it out. I'm not as smart as you, Mike, because Mike is a very successful accountant. And I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't make the balance sheet balance. The business school case made no sense. Nothing I tried would make the numbers end up on the same. They would never add up, right? And so I just gave up. I said, forget it. And you don't really flunk out of business school. They give you a low pass, which means, right. Yeah, you just you didn't do too well.
Cameron, you're one of the most brilliant people, and having read your works, I think you're one of the most brilliant writers ever.
That's very flattering.
I have a hard time believing, like I do balance sheets like blindfolded, like in the dark.
Well, so you got a skill I don't have, my friend, and I'm staring at this thing and I gave up. And I basically, the very first book I ordered off of Amazon.com made Jeff Bezos rich that day. I purchased a book on screenwriting, which is still the best book on screenwriting. I think everyone should get it, which is the Screenwriter's Bible by David Trottier. Anyone who wants to be a screenwriter should get that book. And I taught myself how to write screenplays from that book while I was in business school. And I wrote my first screenplay, a teen horror movie inspired by Scream, which was big in those days, the late 90s, right? So Scream had been big, and I loved Scream. And so I wrote a teen horror movie slasher inspired by Scream in my accounting class. I just gave up, and all my classmates were on our laptops. Everyone's taking notes, and I'm just sitting there writing a script, right? And my classmates like, what are you doing? What are you doing over there? And I graduated. I was working at a big law firm in New York. And I was like, yeah, I get the script here that I got lying around. Maybe I can do something with it. I didn't have any contacts. Like my sister told me 15 years before. I didn't have any contacts, 20 years before. And so I just literally did the worst possible thing you could do, which is I just sent unsolicited letters and emails to random agents saying, would you please read my script? It's a brilliant idea. Would you like to read it? That's the worst possible way to get a representative in Hollywood. But that was the only way I knew. And so I was rejected across the board. I wouldn't even get responses from most people. I got a couple of literally postcards saying, we do not accept, dear sir / madam, we do not accept, submissions, unsolicited submissions. Mm-hmm. And then I sort of gave up. And then one guy I had sent a query letter to, an email to months before, contacted me and said, well, it's actually not a bad idea for a horror movie. Why don't you send me what you got, kid? I'm like, all right, sure. I sent it to him. Didn't hear back from him. And then a few months later, so I forgot about that. It's not going to happen. I'll be a lawyer. It's my destiny, right? A few months later, I get a call out of nowhere on Christmas Day. Nice sort of God's irony. I'm a Muslim guy. Christmas Day, I get a call from this guy. And he said, I got your script. And he said, I threw it in my I'll read this one day pile. And one day happened to be that Christmas Day because he was like, it's Christmas Day. I'm feeling charitable, feeling very Christian. Let me just grab one of these scripts. He randomly pulled my script out of the pile that day. And he was the will of God. He just randomly pulled my script out of the pile, read it, and goes, hey, this is a really good script. What the hell? Because nothing in that pile is ever good, right? Nothing in that pile is ever good. And so he called me up immediately. He said, who the heck are you? You're actually a good writer. And no random nobody emails me and says, can you look at my script who's actually a good writer, right? And so he then connected me to a guy on a TV show at the time, TV show on UPN called 7 Days, which is like a time travel show that I was and his client was a director and producer on the show. And I was so excited to get that guy on the phone. He just said, because that guy was a director, so he thought maybe he might direct your horror movie. So he was trying to like make money. He's like, the agent's like, if I can get my client on your horror movie, maybe we can all sell this thing. I was like, wow, sell this thing? And so he put the client on the phone, and he was a big producer on this TV show. And I watched this TV show. I was a fan. So I said, oh my God, I've got you on the phone. He's like, I really like your horror script. You got something, kid. I was like, well, now that I've got you on the phone, this is the first Hollywood person I've ever talked to. I was like, yeah, I actually watched your show. Can I pitch you an idea for your show? He's like, sure, go for it. Yeah. So I pitched it to him. He's like, that's actually pretty good. That kind of is okay. Why don't you just write me up a synopsis and I'll share it with a showrunner? I was like, oh my God, somebody wants to read something of mine. So I was working 80 hours a week as a lawyer, right? And I didn't have any time. This was a Friday afternoon. I had this conversation, and I was so excited that somebody even wanted to read anything. Instead of a synopsis, I basically went home and locked myself in for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, and wrote the entire script from scratch.
Wow.
I mean, wrote the entire episode that I had in my mind. We got a lot of sirens going on. This is
There's
kind of
my ride, as Robin
So it was
Williams would
just
say.
in your, you just got in the zone and started banging it out. Bam, bam, bam.
Hold on.
It's okay. I was gonna say it's okay. I can talk for a second. You can hear me.
Yeah.
So basically, what happened is you as a writer, you sort of got in the zone. The inspiration was there. Opportunity presented itself. You had a window, and you just went bam. And just,
I went bam, and it was just it's that thing where you don't know you can fail, so you just do it anyway. It's you don't realize that this is stupid what you're trying to do, right? And so, but I wrote the whole script, and I finished on Sunday night, and I emailed it to him. Next morning. Now I'm at work back on Monday morning at my law job, right? Next morning, I get an email from this guy. He's like, what's this? What's this? I was like, it's the script. Maybe you told me you wanted, he's like, what, you have a script? You must have been, you've been working on this for like the last few months? I was like, no, I just wrote it this weekend. He's like, all right, kid, like nobody can write a script in a weekend, right? All right, you know what? I'll take a look at it and I'll give you some feedback, right? With that sort of smug, like, all right. 24 hours later, I'm getting an email. It's like, this is better than anything we have on the show. This is better script than anything we've got. So he hands it over to the executive producer, the showrunner, who at that time is there's a lot of scripts he doesn't like. He's having a lot of problems with writing staff. He looks at it and goes, yeah, just buy this one. Let's just buy this. And because we'll just make this. That's, by the way, against the rules of Hollywood. You're not legally allowed to submit scripts from strangers about your show because then there's copyright issues. There's all kinds of, all kinds of drama. Somebody submits a script.
That means that your work had to be so excellent. Well, first of all, it was excellent, superior, and on the mark that they just wanted to incorporate in the flow of where the show needed to go.
Exactly. And they're like, forget the rules, forget the legalities of it, right? Let's just pay this guy. And so I didn't even understand that they had.
You have an agent?
Remember, I still don't have an agent. I'm just still talking to this guy who liked that horror script. I'm still not represented by anybody, right? And this was just the guy connecting me with his client, so I'm still not represented. I'm still not in the Writers Guild. I'm just a dude, right, with a script. And so I don't fully understand what's happening. But then a few days later, I get a check for a very substantial sum, let's just put it that way, from Paramount. It was in the tens of thousands of dollars for this thing I'd written over the weekend, right? And I was like, wait, what's this check for? That's a lot of money. And he's like, we're buying your script. I'm like, what do you mean you're buying my script? He's like, well, we have a couple of episodes that aren't working, and we're just going to slot this in, right? And I was like, what? And at that point, then the agent who had connected me, he's like, I got to get in on this. He's like, well, I think you need an agent, right? So he represents me, and he takes 10% of that. And God bless him, right? And so, but then I have an agent Sunday. I'm like, wait, I've got an agent? What's happening here? And then the showrunner of the show was like, hey, who the hell are you that can write my show, The Random Nobody? Come to LA. So they fly me out. Again, they fly me out because I can only take a day off from work at my law firm. So they fly me out on a Friday, and I got to be back work on Monday. So I come meet him. I'm so excited. I meet the producer in his office.
You leave at the crack Friday, take advantage of the 3-hour time difference. Exactly. Oh, smart.
So I leave in the morning. I get there and I arrive, and then I quickly go straight. I'm so excited. His name is Chris Crow. He's still a successful writer. Chris Crow's meeting with me, and he's like, all right, kid, you wrote my show. That's pretty impressive. Well, you got any other ideas? So I pitched him another thing I just made up on the spot. He's like, yeah, I like that. Well, why don't you go write a synopsis? So I'm like, synopsis? What's a synopsis? So I'm now this guy who's been my agent for 2 weeks now, right? He's like, well, I'm staying at his house in LA, right? Well, I'm like, because I didn't have any, I just crashed at his house while he arranged his meeting. So I go back to his house and I lock myself up in his guest room and I spend the next 2 days writing another script, like from scratch. And so I hand this in, and on Sunday night, I email it to Chris Crow. He's like, wait, you wrote the entire script in 2 days? Yeah, I was like, just like the other one. Because I didn't know that that's not normal. I mean, to me, I just sit and crank for hours.
Well, you didn't know a synopsis is more. Wait, so you went?
No, I knew there was a synopsis, but I'm like, why would I do a synopsis? I can get a script done in a couple of days. What's the big deal,
Oh
right?
my God.
I mean, I didn't know what was normal, so I was like, all right, well, that's what I can get a script done. So I handed in, and Chris Crow's like, okay, we're gonna buy this one too. And so suddenly I get another check for that amount of money when I get back to New York, and I'm like. And then I get a letter from the Writers Guild saying, in order for Paramount to actually purchase my scripts, I have to be a Writers Guild member. So they are what's called Taft-Hartley. Well, no. 2 scripts enough, but the 2 scripts was the minimum I needed. But in order to actually do the deal legally, Paramount has to submit me for membership to the guild. So I was what's called Taft-Hartley, which Mike, you may be familiar with, the Taft-Hartley law, which allows you to be brought into a union. And so suddenly I hadn't applied for membership to the Writers Guild. It was just dumped on my lap because they needed to buy the scripts.
You get a WGA card in the mail.
I got a WGA card in the mail. I'm like, wait, what the heck's happening here? This was all happening day after day. It was madness. And then I suddenly said, wait a minute. And I'm now like, and I guess you guys will appreciate this. I know definitely Mike's going to appreciate this. But it's, so I'm like an immigrant kid who's like taking care of my mom and dad. They're retired. I'm now, I'm the man of the house. I'm paying their mortgage.
You're the working attorney. You're the one getting a regular paycheck.
Yeah, they're retired. I'm paying their mortgage. I'm taking care of them, right? And so suddenly I have this thing, and I go talk to my mom, and she's cooking in the kitchen. And God bless her, I take care of my mom. She's now here in LA with me. She's in the other room right now. But this was 20 years ago. I said to my mom, this is going to sound crazy, but I think God did this to show me I can do this.
Right.
So I think I'm going to quit my job as a lawyer, and I'm going to move to LA, and I'm trying to do this professionally. So I need your blessings, because if I do this, I can't cover your mortgage until I get my next job. And, she had some savings or whatever, but, my parents aren't rich people, whatever. They had their pension, whatever, Social Security. They could get by, but I was doing well as a New York Wall Street attorney. And now I'm taking that income away from their lives, right? And and I was scared to say.
A hard sell.
I thought it was going to be a hard sell. But the blessings of a mother, I said that to my mother, and I was petrified because I felt like a bad son even suggesting it.
Right.
And my mom said to me, she's like, I always knew you were going to do that. She's like,
that's funny.
When you were a little kid, I would be cooking chicken tikka masala or whatever in the kitchen in Brooklyn, and you would come in at 7, 8 years old, and you would tell me entire stories, movies you were making up from beginning, middle, and end. And I would be completely mesmerized and entertained while I'm making my curry, that you could tell this entire story with characters, and I knew what was going on, and you were 8 years old, and the movie made sense, and I could see it in my head. She said, I always knew you were going to do this. I'm glad you figured it out. And she said, trust God, quit your job, trust God, He will pay our mortgage. And I moved to LA, and it did require trust in God, because it was another year. I was able to get work as an attorney after a few months where I was not able to get another sale as a writer, because you get your lucky break, and then like, what happens now, right? I was taking a lot of meetings, but nothing was happening. So I got work as an attorney in LA, but it was the last thing that happened was a year later. While I was working as a lawyer full time, I was still running around taking these meetings because I had an agent. I was there not to be a lawyer. I was there to get another sale and to become a professional. And so the partners at the law firm started noticing that I was taking off a lot for meetings outside the firm. I wasn't really focused. It's like, we hear you're writing scripts, and everyone in LA is writing scripts, right? And so they had a talk with me, a sort of very difficult talk, in April of 2002. So it would be exactly 20 years ago this April, right? They sat me down and they said, so look, we're paying you a lot of money, and you're either going to be focused on this job or you're going to go become a screenwriter. What's your choice, right?
Whoa.
You need, and they literally
at the law firm.
Yeah, it's a law firm, you guys know. And so they said, you need to abandon the screenwriting if you're going to work here. So you can't be doing this as a side gig. So what's your choice? And at that moment, like a spiritual thing happened inside of me, and I went to a really calm place, and I don't know what overcame me. And I said, "Oh, okay. If you're giving me an ultimatum, then I'll leave. I quit, and I don't have another job, right?" And they were startled by that answer. They're like, "Oh, okay. Well, look, why don't you do this? You can stay here you can fill out your contract for another month. You don't have to do any more work. Look for another job, but on May 1st, you got to be out. And good luck to you, right? And so right after that, I'm like, what did I just do? I quit. I don't have a job. I don't know what to do. I've been taking meetings for months, but nothing's really happened. And then I had this thing. I was like, all right, well, there's this script I want to write. And September 11th had happened a few months before, right? It was 2002. And so I was like, I really want to tell a story about how, because you can imagine, if you remember the PR at the time, the media was like, Islam is the enemy, right? I was like, it's not Islam is the enemy, it's religious fanaticism is the enemy.
Right.
And Muslim fanatics are dangerous, but so are other fanatics. So I said,
all religions.
Yeah, any violent fanatic is a danger. And so I wanted to tell a story about the Crusades. I was like, why don't we tell a story about the time of when the world was reversed, when the Muslims were the world's dominant civilization, Europe was backwards, and Muslims and Jews were allied together, and which is in the last 70 years of Arab-Israeli conflict, people forget that Muslim Jews were once very close communities, right, for a long time. And Saladin was the Muslim king, was a man of great honor and freedom and loved by the people, and Richard the Lionheart was this brutal barbarian who massacred women and children, and the Crusaders were essentially the terrorists, right? So why don't we tell that story? And because I was desperate for work, I was like, all right, I got to crank this thing out, right? Because my agent's still trying to get me something and nothing's really happened. And I then write my first, I write my next, after my horror script, my next screenplay, I basically crank it out over the next 5 days. I'm at this office collecting a paycheck, but I'm not working. So for the next 5 days, I lock myself in and I write this Crusade script, which is Shadow of the Swords, right? I write that over the next 5 days. I come out with it. I give it to my agents, and they're like, what is this? It's like, well, it's a new screenplay, right? I've got this idea of doing this epic on the Crusades. They're like, look, kid, you just sold a couple of TV scripts. You can't write $100 million epic on the Crusades. Right? It's a bit of a jump, right? And there's no market for that because the world is really scared about Muslims and religious fanatics. They don't want Crusades right now. It's right. So I said, I think there's a market for the Crusades. I think, all right. But this is how God works. So I hand that script in at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning in April of 2002, probably April 15th, right? Exactly, almost. And then I have that conversation. At like 2 hours later, my agents call me. What is this? There's no market for it. And I'm like, okay, I think there is. Whatever. You don't want to put it out, fine. They said, why don't you come back to us with another TV script? We can't do anything with this. There's no more. 11 o'clock, so 2 hours after that, 1 o'clock. So 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I get an email from a friend, who I've met through the industry, right, the last year. And he's an assistant at this company. And he's like, you might want to look at this. And he sends me a link to Variety, which just put out a news release that just breaking news, 1 in the afternoon, Ridley Scott has just announced he's planning to do a Crusades movie called Kingdom of Heaven. He doesn't have a script, but he just has the idea, and he hired a writer. So he doesn't have a script, and he's like, so suddenly in 2 hours, everyone is talking about, oh my God, Crusades. Ridley Scott is doing Crusades? Does anybody have a Crusade script that's ready? I'm like, yeah, I got one. I finished it last night. You want to see it? And my agents immediately called me back and said, all right, forget what we said. There's a market for this. This is the same day, right? I wish I could be even making the story up. So they called me like, okay, there's a market for this. And so they immediately put it out, and then a very major producer who has several Oscar nominations, I won't name him here, immediately within 24 hours, like, I'm going to buy this, right? And this is a famous guy who I knew. I was like, oh my God, my career just launched. Oh my God, right? And then literally, all these other producers, Imagine Entertainment, Laura Ziskin, who had just done Spider-Man, Gail Ann Hurd, who did the Terminator series, they were all jumping at it because they heard this other guy was interested, right? And so this is all happening in 24 hours.
Bidding war.
Exactly. I'm going from nobody kid with, a couple of UPN TV script sales a year ago to suddenly all the major players are jumping on this screenplay because of the timing of Ridley Scott. Because everyone wants to compete with Ridley Scott and beat him to it because they all don't have a script yet, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you've got one that's filmable, you can beat him. And so I was like, I'm about to be worth $3 million because all these people are bidding, right? And then, so the first guy, the big producer, who I don't want to mention his name because the story doesn't end well, he comes back and he has a Crusades project already set up at MGM. He's been trying to get a Crusades movie made for 5 or 6 years. And so MGM, the studio, had already had a deal with him, and all of his scripts didn't work and whatever. And now he had a script that worked. So he's like, we can just use this. So I was like, oh my God, yeah, because MGM just put this in production and we're good to go, right?
Mm.
And then I get the offer. This is all happening. This is 24 hours later. So 24 hours later, I've got the world jumping at my feet. 24 hours after that. So this is now Wednesday. I've got this offer coming in from MGM. And the offer comes in and I freeze. I'm like, what? The offer's like, well, yeah, we'll option the script for $5,000. I'm like, that's not a bad deal if it's just like, I'm an independent producer trying to figure out how to do this. Is the studio MGM, which has
a tradition of large-scale epics. It has a long history of financing and underwriting them. It doesn't have a history of needing to bring in other studios. They like doing the stuff
and
themselves.
They have a Crusades project they're trying to do.
Right.
And so they're like, we don't have a script that's filmable. This is a filmable script. We can film it. So it's like $5,000 option. You pay me $100,000. We're good to go. I mean, that's minimum for this, right? Just, and my agent's like, no, just take it, man. This is a huge deal. You got this famous producer. You got MGM. I was like, this doesn't feel right. I'm a lawyer. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. This is not the deal that should be on the table, especially we have Imagine and all these other players running around. That's not the deal. And then God works again. I get a call from another friend. I've been networking for the past year. So I've got a call from another friend who is an assistant who happens to be working at that production company that made the offer. So he calls me and says, look, I'm going to get fired. I'm outside the office right now. I'm calling on my cell phone. I'm going to get fired if they hear me telling you this, but don't take the deal. I was like, what do you mean don't take the deal? He said, it's because I was sitting there. I'm just an assistant. I'm sitting there taking notes, whatever. And the big boss, the big famous Oscar-winning guy was like, who the hell is this Kamran Pasha nobody kid who comes in with this great script that blows? He's like, and the Muslims are the hero of this script. And it's like that. He says, this kid is a problem. This kid's a problem. He's going to mess with the narrative because the Crusade story they want to tell was the nice Crusaders killing the evil Muslims because, it's September 11th. They thought that's the agenda they had. So the story of Saladin, who's this heroic guy, the Crusaders considered him heroic, right?
Right.
Story that was a problem for them. And who I was, random Muslim nobody guy coming in, breaking into the club was a problem. Right. I shouldn't be doing this. I violated all the rules. It shouldn't be happening. And so he said in front of everyone,
you were the anomaly of their matrix.
Anomaly. I was the black swan. I was this random black swan caught up in the politics of Ridley Scott and everything else that was happening that was beyond me. I'm just this nobody guy trying to who just got fired essentially from his law firm a few days ago, right? Mm-hmm. And then he says the boss said, I've told MGM we're not going to use the script, but we have to get it off the market. Right. So I instructed MGM's legal department to send nothing offer to basically co-opt this kid. He'll take the $5,000. We'll control the script and we'll bury it and it will never get made because we're not going to let this kid advance.
And that way they're killing their competition.
They're killing the competition and they weren't letting my message, which was a message that was against their political ideology, out.
Got it.
Right? And so I said, oh, okay. Wow. Is that how this town works? And I told my agents, say no to the offer. My agent's like, what? I said, say no to the offer. And immediately that big producer starts calling not just my agents, but like I was taking film school classes at that time at UCLA. He was calling my professors at film school and saying, he was threatening them. He's like, get this kid to accept the deal. He doesn't say no to me. And I was like, nah, it doesn't work that way. I'm not that guy, right? I'd rather... movie doesn't get made, that's fine, but I'm not going to be humiliated in the game that you want me to play, right?
Right.
And I said no. And then I was like, all right, what's going to happen now? So I was like, well, Imagine and all these other major studios are still interested in it, right? So, and they've heard this guy made a bid. So my agents are calling around town saying, MGM made a bid. They didn't give them the details of $5,000. Like, MGM made a bid. So that makes everybody excited, right? So Imagine brings it into a Universal, Gale and Hurd brings it into Warner's, whatever. And, I think, and so every studio had the script with the knowledge that MGM had made some kind of bid on it and that I turned it down, right? So I was like, well, that's enough to get someone else to bid and counter. Especially you've got like Ron Howard, you got Imagine chasing this, right? You got Laura Ziskin. Spider-Man had just come out 2 weeks before to become $1 billion movie. And Laura Ziskin's pushing this in, right? So someone's going to bid, right? A week goes by, there's silence. Another week goes by, and I'm like, what's happening? Major's like, we don't know what's happening. There's no communication. The studios are not responding. They're literally not responding to us.
They're bluffing.
Well, finally, I was like, after a week, I was like, well, this isn't normal. Are they passing? No, they're not passing. So what are they doing? Finally, this was the word. Every single studio read the script and had the same reaction that the producer at MGM did, that the script is dangerous to the narrative they want to tell, because Good Muslims was not a story they wanted to show after 911, and probably never wanted to show it because that's the agenda of Hollywood. And every single studio became afraid of the script, even if you had people like Laura Ziskin or Ron Howard pushing for it, right?
Wow.
Every single studio was afraid to greenlight it. And so they said, but they were afraid to say to Laura Ziskin, we're not going to greenlight it. She's like, I just made you $1 billion in Spider-Man. What do you mean you're going to say no to me? Right? So they couldn't say that to her. So the end result was they said and my agent said, in my 20-year career, I've never seen this. Every single studio got back to my agency and said, we cannot be the first ones to make an offer on the script. But if one of our competitors makes an offer, we will counter. So each of them.
We call that a Mexican standoff.
That's exactly what it's a Mexican Iron Man standoff. So that's exactly what it was. Everyone was afraid to be the first one, because then they'd be the one taking the political risk.
Damn.
And of essentially other people in the club. You're gonna do this Muslim guy's story? You can do that? You can do that? Right? So they were risking their cocktail party privileges. But if somebody else did it, they could then say, well, I gotta help, I gotta do what Laura Ziskin wants, I gotta bid. And so it sat there. And there was never a pass, and there was never a bid. Right? And so that was my first experience of Hollywood.
Pleasant Valley Picker, CA in the chat says, sounds like they were all afraid.
Yes, they were all afraid. So now, but the story is a happy ending. So that was in 2002, 2010. My novel, Shadow the Swords, which is a direct novelization of the script. Chapter per chapter, every chapter is a scene from the script. It's literally, there's nothing different except I put more detail in. And it's published by Simon & Schuster as part of a 2-book deal. It took me 5 years to do it.
Gil, if you could share my screen, please.
Share your screen, please.
This is one of several things I want to plug for you tonight. One of the ways you and I got to know each other. This is on Amazon, everyone. That's where I bought it. I bought it on Amazon. I'm now very, very close to Kamran. I literally call him Habib brother, which means faithful, sacred brother. We're very, very close, Kamran and I, not just because of all the YouTube shows we do together. We actually follow the same Sufi master. But Shadow of the Swords was how I first got to know him. And I think what I realized is that when you read a book, when you have a true master of the genre, which Kamran is, a master of the genre of writing, and you get to know the person. This is an incredible story. When you get the book, you're going to be like, holy crap, it's really thick. That's going to be your first reaction. But once you get into the storytelling, it is absolutely phenomenal. Now, I had already loved, I remember I made this long before I knew Kamran. I actually asked a dumb question on a live stream. I said, hey, Kamran, this is before I read the book. I'm like, so is this thing like Kingdom of Heaven or what? And God bless Kamran for being so gracious and like, well, no. And then, I mean, with the honesty that I've gotten here, you know, he didn't get into all that stuff because I would have felt like an idiot. He's like, well, why don't you buy it and read it and tell me what you think? And I was like, okay. You know, because sometimes Mexican Iron Man can be like a little bunny rabbit, like, you know, Mike, why don't you read it? I'm like, okay. You know, off I go to, you know,
bopping along.
You know, doop, you know, hopping along like little Mexican rabbit chicken. So I'm not going to give away. I can't. You already know what the book's about. What I can tell you is that you're going to get historical knowledge that's valid, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
And although it's a work of fiction, the unfolding of the story has historical accuracy, and it has an amazing awareness that you get to see the perspectives of what really was happening to people. And she's created these amazing characters. There's some scenes where the way the book opens is powerful. It grabs you. I don't want to say too much about what happens in the story that unfolds in the first 2 chapters, but it grabs you like this and brings you in with its first character. The main 3 characters of the story are on the cover of the book. And, you know, there's this one scene where you have them meet. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't help but wonder if something like that may have really happened.
When all 3 of them, because that happens near the very end, when all 3 of them are in the room together. Yes.
Yeah. So describe for me just real quickly, because we're already like halfway through, and there's so much ground I want to cover with you, and Cardinal Sin and I want to cover with you. But could you really briefly just describe who are the 3 lead characters and why you chose them to tell the stories that you did? You'll do it better than I could.
Well, very quickly, and they're on the cover. So in the cover here, on the screen left, you'll see Saladin, the Muslim Sultan who conquered Jerusalem from the Crusaders. That's the story of Kingdom of Heaven. That movie ends with Saladin defeating the Crusaders, and Muslims have controlled Jerusalem from the 7th century until the 11th century. And for 100 years, the Crusaders controlled it, and Saladin reconquered it for Muslims. And essentially remained in Muslim control until 1967. Right,
and preserved science while the West was in the Dark Ages.
Exactly,
absolutely. There's so many things and practices that continue to this day. And then, of course, we have Richard
the Lionheart, the King of England, who's a central character here. And because most Crusade stories, Richard the Lionheart is the hero. He's even like in the Robin Hood legends, and he's always here. But the reality was, historically, he was a bad guy. He was a bad guy by the historians of his own time. Right, his soldiers hated him. He was a vicious murderer. No problem killing women and children. No problem killing innocent people to achieve his objectives. His soldiers were during the Crusade. His soldiers rebelled against him, and after the Crusade was over, they actually imprisoned him. His own soldiers, on the way back to England, they basically stopped, threw him in prison in Germany, and said, "See you later, sucker!" Right, and left. And it took his mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, to ransom him. He was in prison for years because his own men hated him.
And throughout the book, you tell these stories of how the Crusades are going, and some of them are incredibly graphic. I mean, they're really and I actually went back as I was reading the book. I said, "Wait, is this for real?" And I went and I researched. I'm like, "Holy shit, this really happened!" You know.
Actually, that brings up a question that I have.
Yes, Cardinal, please.
I heard this is total secondhand.
Yeah,
but maybe you can say if it's true or not. I heard that there was a Muslim account of Richard the Lionheart cutting people in half with his broadsword.
Yeah, and that would have happened in the city of Accra, which is an incident that happened that's detailed in the book. It's a really horrific incident. The city of Accra is on the coastal sites of modern Israel, right? And city of Accra was one of the first sites the Crusaders took when they landed, and he basically held the town hostage. He basically showed up, took over this coastal city, and held thousands of people hostage. And he sent a letter to Saladin, who was in Jerusalem, saying, "Surrender the whole country, or I'm just going to kill everybody, and pay this massive ransom." And Saladin's like, "What? Who are you? What happened? No, I'm not going to surrender the country, right?" And so, Richard was that guy. He killed several thousand people, including children, just lined them up and executed them, right? And because he didn't get what he wanted. And he did that on purpose to spread fear, right? That this guy's not messing around, right? And so, yes, he did these kind of things. And his own soldiers were like, "Aren't we here for Christ? Why are we killing these little kids?" That was the first battle. And they're murdering little children who are prisoners. And he's like, "Well, and we deal with it. The amazing thing about it is that I'm portraying him in this, what I'm saying is as a very bad guy, which he was, but my Christian friends who've read the book said it's amazing how deep I delve into Christianity to show that his actions don't reflect the Christian faith. They're not in line with it. And other Crusaders know that and are trying to stop him. And he even gets to a place where he's morally conflicted with what he's doing, that this isn't what Christ wants. And also, Cardinal, so the third character on the screen is a fictional character. It's based on real people. The third character on the screen is the female voice of the story, which is Miriam. And I think we've mentioned that you have a relative named Miriam, right? Mm-hmm. So Miriam is an Egyptian Jewish girl who's the niece of Maimonides. Maimonides is the great rabbi of the Middle East, one of the great rabbis of Judaism. He's like there with Aquinas for Christianity and Ghazali for Islam. And so Maimonides is a major character because Maimonides was Saladin's personal doctor. So he's a major character in the story. And so this is his fictionalized niece who serves as a spy. She ends up working as a spy for Saladin to infiltrate the Crusader camp, which is historically true that Saladin would use Jewish allies to infiltrate the Crusader ad, because to them, the Crusaders, the last time the Crusaders entered Jerusalem, they killed every Jew there. I mean, every single one. They'd lined them up in the main synagogue in Jerusalem and set it on fire.
Enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Well, yeah, but even at this time in history, Muslims and Jews were not enemies, and so they were very allied. And so this was, and so Miriam is very much Saladin's agent, and there's also a sort of a love triangle story that develops there. But my Jewish friends who read the story go, this is a pretty authentic representation of how a Jewish woman might think in these circumstances, right? So that's what I pride myself on, is that I obviously have my own personal beliefs and my politics and my religion and blah, 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 blah. But the characters don't share that. Every character thinks they're the hero of the story, and you got to be authentic to them. If there's a lesson in this unfortunately briefer than it should be called that we're doing today, for any writer who's watching, get out of your bias. The character has a right to their point of view, and their point of view, they believe they're the hero. So even in my story, Richard thinks he's doing the right thing. And it takes finally a moment where he has a vision of Christ, actually, during a moment of hallucination when he's sick with malaria, where he has a vision of Christ in the novel who confronts him. And he talks with Christ, which is essentially him talking to his own conscience, right? But his point of view is authentic throughout. Saladin's point of view is authentic. And, with Saladin, as you'll know this, Mike, the journey I did for him is that he's so lionized by both Muslim accounts and Crusader accounts. He's viewed as this incredibly honorable hero of perfection by both the Christians and the Muslims saw him that way, right? So I said, well, how do you make that guy real? Because the accounts are so incredible of his generosity and his chivalry and all that stuff. Right. So how do you make him real? And so you'll know the scene, Mike. There's a pivotal moment where there's only one chapter in the book that's told from Saladin's point of view, even though he's so central to it, right? And that's near the very end, where Saladin is alone in the Dome of the Rock. The Crusaders are about to win. They're about to conquer Jerusalem, and he's going to lose. And he's alone.
I've been there, by the way.
You've been there. So I've been there too. I was actually going to post a picture today. Tonight is the night of the Isra Mirage, which is, for the Muslims, it's the night where the Prophet Muhammad rose to heaven from the site of the Dome of the Rock. So it's a very special night. And so it's a beautiful sight. And so he's in the dome, and he's got everybody out. He's just communicating with God directly. And the only chapter in the book that's his point of view, you see what he's thinking, because everyone's talking about him and how great he is, and blah, 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 blah. And then you see his point of view, and he's scared out of his mind. He's insecure. He doesn't believe these accolades that everyone is putting on him. He thinks this whole thing is going to come crashing down, and he's failed everybody. And then you finally see him as a real human being, right? And he's not this lionized perfection character, because that's not interesting, right? Then you see this guy has had all this put on his shoulders. Both his friends and enemies think he's this invincible good guy. He's just like a guy that's in over his head, trying to do the right thing, right? And then, so that's what you got to do. You've got to present real characters, authentic, make them human, make them flawed, make them relatable, because, especially your enemies, especially the ones that you don't like, make them human. Then you got a good story.
And I was just going to ask you, what is the essence of storytelling that most writers today just don't get? Why do people tell stories, and why do people watch or read stories?
Okay. Well, and we've had this conversation privately, so I'm going to do it now more publicly and broadly. The problem with most storytellers today and throughout history is they don't understand story structure. A story is a narrative. It's a narrative that the human soul wants to follow like a river, up and down, right? And there's a lot of narcissistic writers, like you'll see novelists who just write to see how nicely they can use the English language, right? And so big words that they know and poetry, but the story don't go anywhere, and you don't feel touched by it, because it's just this, it's just words. Words are the tool. Structure is the building you're trying to build. And so one of the things, and Mike knows, is on my Patreon, I think both of you gentlemen are on my Patreon. Yep. I have published, and I'm going to republish tomorrow. I publish every month my guide. I have a very lengthy guide to my storytelling method, which focuses on story structure, which focuses on, in order for you to make the story you want to tell, you first have to know where you want to start it, the opening scene, how you want to end it, and then how you connect those 2 points. And you keep doing that throughout. And
it's so specific. I want to ask you a few questions before we talk about your Patreon, before you'll have to log off. But let me flip switches for you. So after the book, take us through sort of 2005 to now. Like, bring us up the last 15 years. The Sleeper Cell, Bionic Woman. I mean, one of the great pleasures for me when I got to know you was the fact that I actually love Sleeper Cell as a show. I love the Bionic, and it's funny, the thing that really hit me is that I love the way Bionic Woman started. Yeah. And then I remember being like, oh my God, this show is going to hell in a handbasket. And then later I get to know you and find out why.
And I told the story of what happened.
So take us through real quickly, if you could, in about 5-10 minutes.
Very quickly. So I had that initial drama that I shared with you, but I survived this town. It took me a couple of years to get on my feet, right? But I got some buzz off that original Crusades, at least drama around it. And then I got hired from that. That Crusade script got me my first job on The Twilight Zone with Forrest Whitaker. So that was my first staff writer job. My boss was Ira Stephen Bear, who created Deep Space Nine. To this day, the best showrunner I've ever worked with. The best
That must have
across the
been
board.
that
I would
must have
work
been
with him
just
again.
great
a
work
second.
experience.
The greatest writer I've ever worked with and the greatest leader in this town. In 20 years, I've worked on 8 shows, maybe. Nothing like him. He's incredible. So I went from there. Then I got my big break that got me the tension that the town was kind of denying me was on Showtime in 2005. As Mike mentioned, there was a series called Sleeper Cell about a Muslim who's an FBI agent who infiltrates Al-Qaeda and basically defeats them from within. And it was Michael Ealy was our star, playing an African-American Muslim FBI agent. And that show really hit the industry hard at the time. You had 24 on all the shows. It was your standard, like, Jack Bauer defeats all the brown people in
Yeah.
And so, they're sort of mindless, faceless, bad guys with no agenda, right? And they're not real. But Sleeper Cell went into reality. We explained, like I said, we explained how the terrorists think, because we could do that because our hero was against them. He's a devout Muslim who thinks they're wrong and thinks they are violating Islam, which they are. And the show showed that. But it also showed why they believe what they're doing is right and why
that's a great way in to that story. I love that.
That's the authentic way in, right? And then you see these characters. And so we did 2 seasons of that. We got a bunch of Golden Globe nominations, a bunch of Emmy nominations. It really launched my career. From that, I got into network TV, worked on Modern Women after that, which was, let's just say, a show that could have worked, but a lot of forces were beyond our control there that didn't allow it to work. Then I worked on Kings, which is a show that did not succeed, but it was critically incredibly well received, right? It just was it should have been on HBO. It shouldn't have been on NBC, right? It was a show based on the story of King David, right? And
that's got to be on HBO. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it was a modernization of the King David story, and if those who haven't watched it, it's 1 season. You can get it on DVD or Amazon, and it's an incredible show. Very proud of it. And then since 2009, my novels were published in 2009. I've got Shadow of the Swords. My other novel, that's a 2-book deal, is this novel, which is even thicker, Mother of the Believers, which is the story of the birth of Islam from Aisha's point of view. So here again, I'm writing from a woman's point of view, and the greatest comment I get from fans is that women write me and say, I had no idea a man wrote this novel until I finished it, and I got to the end and I saw your picture on the back page, and I was like, wait, a man wrote this? The entire novel is from a woman's point of view. It's like an 800-page novel. It's like, I never realized a man could.
Gil, share the screen, please.
Pardon?
I was asking Gil to share the screen, please.
Share the screen. So you maybe have this. Yeah, there it is. So a man wrote this, and there's Mother of the Believers, and I'm very proud of it. And so I've been around. I've been working a lot since TV. It's been a difficult few years recently because the world's been turning upside down. And so I reached that stage in the journey where a lot of people are like, this idiot, this idiot got around the system, but he's still here. And so I've worked. I'm still here. I'm often fighting an uphill battle to stay in this town because they don't really want me here. I don't share their values. I'm a religious Muslim, which isn't in line with the secular atheistic values of the industry, materialistic values, right? I'm personally, I'm politically pretty libertarian. I believe in live and let live. This town is pretty sort of fake communist, and they don't really like people who believe in personal freedom. That's not their thing, right? And so whatever. So I'm still here. I've survived this town, worked a lot, in sort of CW shows for a while, worked on like Rain, Nikita, Spy Show, worked on Roswell, New Mexico. And then, I worked on the show that never got broadcast, which we did the show with Oliver Stone set in Guantanamo Bay, about the prisoners in Guantanamo. There are still prisoners there. Obama didn't get rid of them. Trump didn't get rid of them. But Biden's not going to get rid of them. There's people that have been there since they're 18 years old that were put there under some random villager said, I think that guy whose land I want, I think he's a terrorist. Americans take him away and possibly give me $5,000 for the ransom. And these poor kids would be taken away and like put in Guantanamo for 10 years and it's pretty horrible, right stuff. And so that show never got on the air.
I had a question for you, Kamran. Can you tell us about your writing process when you're working by yourself versus in a writer's room?
That's a great question. That's a great question, Cardinal. So by myself, most of the time is fighting procrastination. That's the process, right? It's like, I'll start tomorrow, inshallah, God willing. Tomorrow I'll do it, right? And eventually you reach a place where like, oh, I don't have any money. I guess but tomorrow's going to become today, right? And then you start writing and then you get it done, right? I just did this thing where I was procrastinating on a project for a few weeks. And then I just spent the last month and I finished a horror movie spec script I've written based on a real ghost story that happened to people I know. And they gave me the permission to tell their story. And so I just handed the script into them. I'm waiting to get their feedback. Hopefully they liked it. But yeah, so that's a script I just finished last week. I was working on it for a month, locked myself. And basically what I do is when I get off the procrastination, I set myself a goal, not always followed, but the goal is to write at least 1 hour a day. Write 1 hour a day, because we can all actually find 1 hour a day. We can. We all, as writers, we tell ourselves, I'm too busy. I got this. You're spending 5 hours a day on the internet and checking your this and wasting time on, checking out crap on Instagram. You can spend 1 hour, 10 o'clock at night, 9 a.m. in the morning, whatever, just 1 hour, and you can get it done. And so writing 1 hour a day, I got this 120-page script done in a month, right? So, because I generally write 4 pages an hour, and I got 120 pages done over 30 days.
So two questions I want to ask you. One is, what do you see as the future of Hollywood in terms of creative opportunity for the future, for independent writers who might be watching this, independent creators, people who have their own ideas, as well as frustrated fans like me that will never be a creator, but we're hoping for something better? What do you see? What is your Kamran Pasha crystal ball vision show you? What does the next 5 to 15 years look like? Is it going to be bleak and awful where they keep destroying the things we love and there's not going to be anything left? Or what do you think the future is going to be?
So I want to answer that, but I'm going to spend 30 seconds on finishing what I didn't say part of Cardinal. Cardinal asked about writers' rooms. So that we'll end off that on that, Mike. So writers' rooms are where in a television, like I said, until most television shows, I've worked on rooms that ranging between 5 to even 10. There must have been 15 people on Bionic Woman. And with 15 people, we couldn't make a good show. Oh, well. So, but so it's you're thrown together. Usually it's people you haven't worked with. Writers, every writer's room, the culture of it is established by the showrunner. Effective rooms like the ones Ira Stephen Bear did are very well organized. They're, everyone feels that the show is there. So Ira had a rule that anyone who was not writing at that moment had to be present in the writer's room during story conversations. Unless you were on set or you had been assigned to go home and write the script, you needed to be there, and the show could not be broken without everyone present in the room. All right. And that was his rule, because everyone had to be invested in every episode, so that you felt like the episode that the other person is writing has like 15 ideas of yours in it. It's your episode. Right. And so that's what the well done shows. The not well done shows, I won't list which they were on. I was on a couple that were run like this, where basically you had showrunners who, ran them like as a petty gossip place. They had their favorites. It's like junior high school. They had their favorites. I worked on one show where there were 2 writers' rooms, where basically the showrunner had literally had 2 rooms where separated by a glass wall, where the people he liked would be working with him, and the people he didn't like would be working on nonsensical stuff that he was never going to look at. And we all knew which room we were in, right? So that's not the way you do a writer's room, right? And so I worked on a writer's room where the showrunner decided they weren't interested in being in the writer's room. They wanted to hang out with the actors and be cool, right? And so they left the city. They moved to where the show was in production, bought a house there, and basically spent all their time on the set, while not giving anyone the authority to actually move anything forward on the show. Because it's like, you can do that. You can be the showrunner on set. Go do that. But that means the number 2 has to be the person running the writer's room and has to have the authority to say, it's how we're going to do it, right? We can do that. Number 2 sat there. All right, we've spent all day. Boss has not been there. Boss is in another state. All right, I'm going to call the boss after. Thank you for your hard work. I'll pitch to the boss all your hard work. And the boss at 10 o'clock at night, after hanging out, having drinks with the actor, like, I don't like any of that crap. Go back to square one. That's not how you do a writer's room, right?
So how does one comport oneself in a writer's room for television or streaming?
It's like any environment it's a corporate environment. There's a lot of corporate politics. There's a lot of petty people in Hollywood, right? Just like any corporate environment. And so there's, unless you're in a room full of friends, and I've never been in a room full of friends, unless God willing, I hope on my show I fill it with people I trust, right? But it's always been randoms that were selected. Sometimes they're selected for political reasons. They're the right race, right ethnicity, right this, right blah, blah, whatever. And they're there, and and half the time, the people that are the most powerful are the least talented. And so you just have to sit there and grin and bear it. I'm not particularly good at it. I've had very good writers' rooms where I work well in an environment where it's mutual respect, and I've worked on those shows. And in any environment where it's like this clown show that I just described, I don't tolerate it, and I usually get fired from that place, because I'll point out what's wrong. I'll say, well, why is the boss not here? Who's in charge? Like, shut up and do the work. I'm like, this. And so, so I know we're running out of time here, but I want to end on what Mike asked about the future of the industry, right? So the future of the industry is this. I am a very hopeful person, as Mike knows. I know Mike thinks he's a cynic. He's not. He has a very big heart. He's just been hurt a lot. That heart has been hurt a lot by these clown-like characters that I've had to work with, right? And I can understand that because it's heartbreaking as a fan to watch your franchise being ruined by dumb people, right? It's hard. It's even harder to be a fan in the room watching stupid people screw things up, and you're telling them, "Don't do that, boss. Boss, I don't think the audience wants that," and then they shut you up, right?
Right.
That's even worse because you are the fans' last hope, and you failed, and you can't. And this garbage is going through, and there's nothing you can stop it, and then you get blamed for it.
Yeah,
Like, you worked on that stupid show, and you screwed up Bionic Woman, you screwed this up. You have no idea. You have no idea what I went through trying to save that thing. You have no idea of the politics of and how much I put my own career at risk trying to stop bad ideas and bad storytelling, and they won't know. So yeah, but the reality is there are a lot of good people in Hollywood. The people in power at the last decade have been a lot of incompetent people. Just because we're at a bloated moment in civilization, where we're at the end of a cultural thing, where a lot of rich people who haven't earned their wealth have been running things, and that's a situational thing, not just in Hollywood, but it's in politics, it's worldwide, right? And so you got these aristocrats who think they know everything, who mishandle stuff. That's how Hollywood's been working for 10 years. I say 10 years because the first 10 years there was more entrepreneurialism that I've been here doing this. April will be 21 years since I sold that script to 7 days. April will be 21 years, right? And so the first 10 of those was hard, but at least entrepreneurial. The last 10 has been, if you're not in the club, you're not going to go anywhere, right? But that broke everything, right? That broke everything, and the industry's broken by that now. And so you're beginning to see the rise of new entrepreneurialism because that method doesn't make people money. Just hiring your friends and sabotaging good ideas for bozo politics of the week, virtue signaling of the week, right? So you can feel cool on Twitter. Even these showrunners want to feel cool on Twitter. So, you're screwing things up to satisfy an army of bots on Twitter, right, is madness, and it makes you lose money. So the industry has figured that out. We're now in the process of resetting it. This will be the beginning process. I've said David Zaslav taking over Discovery and taking Discovery at Warner Media will be a catalyst for this. He's already out there firing people left and right in CNN. He's already doing that in Warner Brothers. This guy hasn't even taken the title yet, and people are fleeing Warner Brothers left and right because they're afraid he's going to fire them, because he's just like, "Oh, you don't make money? Get out," right? And it's better for you to get your job first somewhere else.
When I read your articles and I think of him almost like that scene when Arnie comes in the HBO show, oh my God, Entourage, where he takes over the talent agency and he starts paint cutting everybody, boom, 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 and he fires them by a paint gun. Let's talk. Share my screen quickly.
Yeah.
If you could, real quick, because Cameron has to go, and so real quickly, I
I'd
want to
love
make
to
sure
come
that.
back. I know you like to do longer things. I just had other commitments to our friends over at Toxic Femininity,
Right.
And so I have a weekly commitment to them. I'm happy to come back and do this conversation.
I would love to do a deep dive on Masters of the Genre with you on your book specifically,
That's
because
fine.
I have read them, and I would love to go a deep dive story, and just so we have that in the historical record would be wonderful, because I've talked about your book on many channels, but I haven't had a chance to talk with you about it in detail.
Yeah. We actually haven't talked about it. It's amazing.
So would that be okay, Gil? We could bring him back another
I'd
time.
love to have Cameron back. Yeah.
Okay, so just Kamran Pasha, as we all know, as he was introduced, just to review, this is his Patreon. He's a screenwriter, director, novelist, worked in Hollywood for over 20 years. Emmy and Golden Globe nominated Sleeper Cell, Kings, NBC, Nikita, Rain Roswell, New Mexico, the CW. Publisher of 2 novels. This is his Patreon. He listen. I'm a member of a lot of Patreon channels. This by far is the most active and the biggest bang for the buck. There's 5 levels that Cameron has. You can gain access for $5 a month, and you get his newsletter. At $10, you get to ask Q&As. You actually get to write a question, and guess what?
Not a Q&A tonight. Yeah,
he actually responds. Go figure. And then at $20 a month, you get access to drafts and work in progress. Like, for example, we've been getting chapters of his latest
third novel.
Of his latest novel, and it's been wonderful to get that. And that's not, you get behind the scenes content. At the $20 a month, you start to get discounts on the scripts and novels that you might be writing. So if you want to hire Cameron, that's
wonderful
an additional
value
fee beyond the patron, but you start getting discounts. And then he's got a gold and a platinum tier, and at $50 and $100 a month, you can get 25% at 50% discount at $100 a month. And actually, here's the amazing perk, is that you get a phone call of a half hour per month or 1 hour per month if you're at the $100
every penny
level. And you know, normally I just want to tell everybody who's watching this on the replay or watching this live, $100 a month might sound like a lot. $1,200 a year. If you're at all a creative, let me tell you something. It will cost you out on the free market, no discounts, anywhere from 5 to 20 grand to have someone just read it once or twice.
That's actually true.
Yep.
My
Okay.
friends are like, why are you doing this, man? I mean, you could
And so
make a
the
lot of money on
discounts,
this.
discounts that he's offering for $50, $100 a month is just phenomenal. And here's the thing: imagine getting to talk to Cameron one-on-one for 30 minutes to an hour. Hey,
I just did, and it was amazing.
I was hard on you, Cardinal, because
You
Cardinal.
were, but you know what?
Cardinal was sharing a story.
It was
He's
a
a
big
great
help.
writer, but I was hard on him because I was like, dude, I want you to win an Oscar and an Emmy, man. So I'm going to put you to that standard. But you held it.
This is not. You're not paying for a pat on the back and a little, little fluffy fuff.
Yeah,
you know,
Writer's
you're such a
Digest.
cute-
It's not.
You're a cute little bunny rabbit. You go with your little script, and sometimes you're not. No, Cameron wants you to. Cameron knows all the highs and the lows of Hollywood, and he wants you to be successful. And with that, Cameron, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We're still going to talk about your books after you leave. Promote your Patreon, and I know you've got to get over to Toxic Femme over at Midnight Edge. Thank you so much, Cardinal.
Thank you, Cameron, so much.
I honor both of you, and just let me know, Cardinal. Obviously, both of you gentlemen are on my Patreon. So, Cardinal, just drop me a DM if you want to do this again next week. If you want to do part 2 next week, I'm happy to do that. I mean, why don't we tentatively even say that we'll do this next week, part 2? Maybe
all right, great. I'll see you
my
here.
schedule and confirm that, and make sure there's nothing already scheduled for this time, and then we can do another because I don't want to. I know you like to do 2 hours, and I don't want to cut your audience short shrift. So, and I want to thank. I'm so engaged here. I didn't really engage the chat, so I apologize. But I want to thank everyone who watched here and stick around. I mean, this is a great channel. Cardinal Mike, I'm getting to know Cardinal now. Mike, I've known for quite some time, and he really is a spiritual brother. So stick around, support these guys, and God willing, I'll see you all hopefully next week, and we'll dive in deeper.
That sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. And everybody in chat, stick around. We're going to start hitting some of your comments and some of the things that you put afterwards. Thank you,
and if
Cameron.
you have questions here, let's say we're doing this next week. If there's questions you want to hold, give them to Mike and to Cardinal, and we can do them next week if I wasn't able to address them this time.
Okay,
absolutely.
Sure. All right, guys. God bless everyone. Peace. Take care.
See you later. Thank you.
Peace out. Wow.
Well, how do you think that went?
That was great.
Everybody in the chat that's here, if you like what you heard, give us a 1. If you're unhappy with what you heard, give us a 0.
Or rabbit chicken.
Yeah, 0 means bad rabbit chicken. 1 means good rabbit chicken.
So let's see who's here and say hi. Going all the way back, of course, we have, oh my goodness, hundreds of comments.
Yeah, the chat's been incredibly active.
It has.
They've been talking amongst themselves.
Had.
They've been talking amongst themselves. They've been commenting.
Gap Stargate, thank you very much for being here. Handled this very well. And Cosmic Squirrel is here. Hell. And Ari is here. Hello. Andrew Lundell. Hail. And Herc130, my good friend. Raquel is here. Love the t-shirt. Pat S., my brother. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Cosmic Squirrel. Yeah, we do have a lot of interplay here. Jet Sparks is here. Hello. Pop Culture Curator. Greetings. Pleasant Valley Picker. How are you doing? Ultimatum. Phantom Boomer is here. Hello. Loki is here. Cam is here. Hello, hello. And Michael Beacom is here. Good to see you and good evening. Tolfer is here in the house. Hello. And that must mean Cam's Crash Courses. And we have, obviously, Mexican Iron Man is here. Hello, how are you? Canadian Spider-Man. Good to see you. Oh, so many comments. It's just crazy. It's crazy. Phantom Boomer. Boy, busy chat. Busy chat. Thank you to Mexican Iron Man. Absolutely. Tracy Asteria is here. Thank you for being here, Tracy. Great question, by the way. So many wonderful people. Your Muslim uncle is here. Hail, good to see you. Low spec Linux laptop. Hail. And Matthew Pounder is here. Good to see you. Boy, you've been busy in the chat too, Mike.
Yep. Welcome, Andrew Lindell. He says he didn't comment at all because he was immersed in the story of Cameron storytelling, which really was. And also, thank you, Ari Bavel, for saying it was a fantastic show. Thanks for being here. Like, share, and if you're not already, please subscribe to Cardinal Sin. We've got it. I think, Cardinal, you've got enough watch hours. We just got to get to 1,000 subs. Isn't that it?
Yep. We got to get the subs up. Let's see. There's a ton of people here. One. While
you're doing that, I'll jump ahead. Canadian Spider-Man asked me, how much insider stuff did you see in Hollywood? I guess I can answer that question in two ways. One is that when I had my accounting office open in Santa Monica and Fifth, and right there on the west side, there were clients that asked me to do things in our accounting office that I wasn't comfortable doing. And I eventually had to close that office because I couldn't do legitimate accounting for these Hollywood post-production places and maintain my integrity. The money was good, but I couldn't look myself in the mirror. And I didn't want to look over my shoulder. And I would get calls like, hey, the client, I'm not going to say who, but say production company X, my staff would call me and say, hey, so-and-so called for the office today. And they took a check and they're going to make it out to cash. And I knew what they were going to do with the 10 grand, right? They're going to go to the bank, pull out 10 grand cash, and they're going to go party. And that was a no-no, because I knew what they were buying and doing, and those things aren't deductible. Unbelievably, lap dances and powder that you don't put in your oatmeal is not deductible as a tax expense.
And you can write it off.
It's not deductible as a tax expense, and you cannot write it off. So, yeah.
And, of course, Anti-Derivative Jill is here. Hello, Jill.
Hello.
Okay, so we got through some of the chat. Wow, what a impacting, powerful experience that was.
I thought it went great.
Yeah, I was on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, I think where we can go a little deeper with Cameron is go a little deeper into the Hollywood. What I would like to do is go into Hollywood storytelling. I know that he's got some behind the scenes stuff that he's seen, like stuff that's happened in meetings, stuff that's happened with his agent. I've heard him allude to it on different channels, but I really want to sort of pin him down. So everybody watching in the chat, come back next week. I know that he's got some real, kind of like VH1 behind the scenes type of stuff that he can share. And I really want to deep dive into his book, Shadow of the Swords, because I don't think I haven't had the opportunity to do that with him. So I think we can do that. That would be good. And I've read it. I've read the entire book once and about half the book twice. There's a lot of chapters in there that
sounds like you were really enamored with it.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, it surprised me because even though I said I liked the movie Kingdom of Heaven, you know me, Gil. I mean, I'm more of a sci-fi guy, or I'm much more likely to read a UFO book or a paranormal book, or all the authors that we've had on Into the Fringe, the shows that we did before my accident, and all the shows you've done, since by yourself. All those authors are my staple go-to. I mean, those are all the books that I've had in my library. And so to read Cameron's book took me a little bit out of my comfort zone, because I'm much more likely to read an EU book or a Star Wars, I'm actually more likely to read a comic book, even, or a graphic novel. But if I'm going to read a book, it's usually going to be like a Star Wars, Star Trek, sci-fi, maybe even a nonfiction, research book, or like, for example, I bought all the 411 David Pilates books,
Mm-hmm.
and I've read all those cases.
I hope you didn't buy them on Amazon.
No. I bought the whole set from him from his website. Like I got the whole after watching his movies. And then, of course, seeing a lot of, I bought the whole set that he had. He just released one for, I don't want to change the subject too much away from Cameron, but he just released the Idaho book. Anyway, my point is that I'm not generally
Idaho book. Yeah, it outsold all of his other books.
Oh, well, that's good for him. We still got to work on getting him here. But
Absolutely.
Going back to Cameron, is that anybody in the chat, you're going to thoroughly enjoy this book. It's just a compelling read. Now, there's some chapters where he tells the story or there's a dialogue, and I had to go back and reread it because I would get further along in the book, and I wanted to go back and understand something that happened before. Like when he talks about at the end, there's this meeting of all of them, of the main characters, that they're all in the same. In order to appreciate that, there's certain chapters that I kind of, blew right through that I had to go back and take a deeper read on.
I know it's like when you're on the edge of your seat and you're reading, you almost want to skip forward to see how get to the good stuff, but it's all good stuff.
That's exactly it. That's
the mark of a good writer.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's anyway. I didn't mean to steal the whole conversation. I think is there other people to talk to and say.
I'm really glad that you jumped in when you did, and you asked some great questions, and then we're going to have him back next week because I can finish the questions that I have, and I bet he'll have some new insider news by then.
Yeah. I what I can do too is if you want, I can send him a punch list of stuff and get him all prepped. I mean, he's got some fascinating stories.
That's a great idea, Mike.
Right. Yes. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Phantom Boomer says, at Mexican Iron Man, the Advanced Book Exchange and thrift books are good sources for hard-to-find and out-of-print books. Picked up a 2-volume bio of Robert Heinlein. Interesting.
Cool. Wait, hold on. Let me kind of paste that.
Really smart and brilliant people in the chat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, Cardinal Sin Channel doesn't have morons, that's for sure.
Well, you have to love me or leave me, one or the other.
Love you or leave you. That's funny. Hey, is that the new? That's not the new spot. That's the when you moving all the gear over.
I was gonna do it today, actually, the last of the gear, but I wanted to make sure everything worked, and I didn't have time to, do a test run of everything. So, getting pretty close.
Cool. All right. So with that, if anybody has any questions in the chat or whatnot, I think we should wind it up. Yeah.
I think you're right. You've got stuff to do, and I really appreciate your being here. You asked some really insightful questions, and I'm looking forward to next week. Let's do it again. And everybody, thanks for being here. And until then,
if we can, Gil, before you sign out, can we today's Monday? Let's set up the stream by Wednesday or Thursday so I can promote the link for the show on all my other channels that I have.
Sure,
on.
Of course.
So that if we have it up by Wednesday, then I can promote Thursday, Friday, all the different shows that I do during the week.
It's Cardinal Sin out.